We're live. If you're watching this in the replay, you can fast forward about 15 minutes and you will get to the beginning of the show. Otherwise, we're going to do some pre-show for the next few minutes and get things going. Hello, everyone in the chat room. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll be getting started in about 15 minutes. Got a red light. I don't like the red light. Let's try that again. See what we can do there. It's green, and we're waiting. Red light. Should not be giving me a red light. Oh, I don't like that when that happens. Let's see what's going on with that. Okay, let's change. The Network Plus study group is right now. Click here to join me. And that goes to live, and we'll save it, and we will update the cache, and let's listen in ourselves to make sure that I'm actually, live. That would be good if it was working. Here's my website. Here's a thing. I click on it, and there's something loading, and it's spinning. Yeah. And the Network Plus study group is right now. Yeah, it sounds fine. That sounds like a wiener. All right. Hello, chat room. If you are watching this on the YouTube side, you can follow along with the chat on ProfessorMesser.com. There's chat at the bottom of the page, and you can follow along. Let's start our quiz up and just get that ready to go. It'll be the Network Plus. Yeah, I don't need to know names. We won't randomize. You can give me, it'll be teacher paste. So I don't, and let's start that. So now those of you on Socrative, maybe you've downloaded the Socrative app, the student app. You don't need the teacher app, you need the student app. I don't know why that amuses me so. You can download that or just pop open a new browser window and go to Socrative.com. I'll talk about that as we get things going on the study group. So you can follow along, answer questions. I've got questions for you to go through. All right, time frames, we're good. Let's get other stuff going here. Yep, we got some people on the YouTube side, so I see you people. I don't see you people. I mean, that would be weird. It's not like you're there. But I see that you're there. I see that you exist. That's not right either. You know what I'm saying. There's a few of you in Socrative. Now, let's see. I've still got 5 minutes till I'll have this go. It's kind of warm in here. Let's get it a little nicer in here. What is it set to? It's set to, everybody can see me. It's set to 78 degrees. Let's cool it down just a little bit. Which seems warm, but it really isn't. You're in the teacher side. You need to go to the student link. You're looking for a room once you go to the student link. The room will be Professor Messer, all one word. That's better. Yep, if you go to Socrative.com, maybe I can pull it up in Safari. That way it'll look like it does when you see it. So if you go there, you will see, make things bigger, and oh, I don't, and I can't see anything. You can't see a darn thing. Let's fix that right now. It's so useful if you're able to follow along with me on the same thing. Now you'll be able to see this. There it is. So, of course, now my big head is in the way. You're not going to see it at all. Let's get rid of me. There we go. So you'll see there is a student login there at the top. You will click the student login. It will present you with a teacher's room code. And my room code, it's not really a code, is it? It's just Professor Messer. It's not really codey. It's not a code. It's just a thing. It's just a thing there. And that will get you where you need to be. So that's the story. And it's already in the chat. So me doing all of that was really for nothing. So there you go. All right. Let's, what do we got to do? We got 10 minutes. We got 9 minutes. Oh, it's time for a vocal zone, of course. Vocal zone, the throat pastel. That gets me through 2 hours of talking. Vocal zone helps keep a clear voice. It has peppermint oil, myrrh tincture, and menthol. Read the enclosed leaflet before taking this medicine. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I've completely not read the leaflet. In fact, I probably took the leaflet and threw it out because it's in the way. What do I need a leaflet for? Oh, well. Do not take if you are allergic to any of the ingredients. Well, that's helpful. If this could harm you, do not take it. Well, thank you. Let's see if we can get this thing working the way I wanted to get it working. Is this really okay? We got plenty of space. It looks fine. Well, maybe it'll start working when I plug it in. We'll see. Let's eject it normally. Maybe that was my problem. So I did not eject it normally. We'll try this again. It's green, it's green, it's green. I want it to go dark. It should just go dark. Red I don't think is good. Red means it's being accessed. So I have a feeling it's not accessing it properly. We'll start recording on it and see what it does. I'm sure it'll be fine. See, there it went out. That's what we wanted. That is my my video recorder. I have 2 video recorders on this side, and I'm doing a separate video recording on my TriCaster, which is this over here. And of course, YouTube is doing the same thing as we speak. Let's do a check. There's 1, 2, camera 2, camera 3, camera 4. Should probably put camera 3 up like this. Camera 3, camera 4. Camera 3 and 4 don't have my big head in them. I don't usually go to those. I usually go to this one that overlays me, which works fantastic. And for the phone calls, it should be V1. It is. Phone lines are not up yet. They'll be up in the second hour. If you are in Socrative and it says you have not started, then you are in the wrong room, because we have started. We have actually begun that. And people have answered. Make sure you spell it properly, Professor Messer. Although it sounds alike, it doesn't really spell the same way. If you're in Socrative, you should get a question, actually. You should receive this question: how long have you been studying for your Network Plus certification? And you should see options there. And 23 of 25 of you have seen those options and have answered. Okay. Should have probably taken this vocal zone a few minutes ago. Now I'm looking for something I can use to get rid of it if we need. Nope, you're not at the end. You are at the beginning. 28 of you are in there. So if you're in the Socrative and it's telling you anything other than showing you the screen that shows this question and gives you these answers, you're in the wrong place. Get rid of this. All right, 4 minutes to showtime. 4 minutes to showtime, Mr. Sinatra. There's nothing more disturbing and unattractive than someone trying to get rid of a lozenge before showtime. Okay, we're doing well here. I got 2 minutes. This is going to be a race. Why didn't I do this earlier? I always forget. Got a lot on my mind. There's a lot going on. I have 11 videos queued up. I wonder if I still have that open. I do not. So we're good there. The room name for Socrative is Professor Messer. In fact, I should probably just show it to you before showtime. I don't know why I didn't. There it is. There it is. Room name, Professor Messer. I feel like I should just spell it differently. Then there wouldn't be a thing with the stuff. Thank you, chat room, for typing stuff in the chat room while I'm not typing in the chat room. Okay, let's start our local recordings. And they're running. You can see they're running. So there's a little Cylon thing happening there. So we got backups. We got options, people. Let's prep for the start. Where is my graphic? There it is. Okay, it works now. I'm glad I was able to fix that. It's the little things, isn't it? Okay, I think we're good. We got recordings going. The stream is up. I got things on my screen. Got things over there. Okay. And I'm about 30 seconds ahead of you guys. So by the time I start, it's like midnight or noon 30. So we'll get this thing going right now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 2015 Professor Messer Network Plus study group. This is our monthly study group where I ask you questions and hopefully you can give me the answers. We all do this online. I'll go through exactly the process so we can all follow along and answer. If you're watching on the replay, I'm sorry, we can't do this in real time on the replay. You don't have a way to answer, but you could still follow along and answer the questions. There's a lot to go through today. There's been a lot of work with Network Plus going on here over the last month since we had our study group. But I think we've got quite a few things to talk about and go through. First, let me remind you that if you want to learn more about the Professor Messer Network Plus products, all of my videos, of course, every minute of every video is available to watch for free online. But if you want one that you can take offline, it's the supporters of my offline videos and the supporters of my course notes that really keep this whole process going. So thank you so much for supporting. You can also support me by following me on Twitter. That's professormesser.com/Twitter. Also YouTube. We have over now 100,000 subscribers to my YouTube channel, which is amazing. It's surprising to me every time I look at it. We're like 104,000 right now and still growing. Cannot appreciate that enough. I really do thank everyone for that. And I can save you money. If you're planning to take your exam, you're looking for some voucher discounts, our friends at GTS Learning have provided us with a 10% discount. Don't pay full price for your voucher. You can go to professormesser.com/vouchers and get one for a 10% discount right off the top. If you are wanting to follow along with us, you will follow along on Socrative. It is running right now. So if you're getting something other than a question on your screen right now, you're in the wrong room. You're on the wrong teacher code. So go ahead and log into Socrative. You can pop open a new browser. You could also download the Socrative app for your mobile device or your tablet. Make sure you download the student app. Teacher app's the one I use. The student app's the one you use. And you can get that from Google Play, from the Apple App Store, from the Windows Store to load on there, or just pop it up in a new browser and go to Socrative.com. There's the URL. The room name, make sure you spell it properly. Professor Messer. Professor has an O. Messer has an E. If only I could confuse things further. This would be a good way to do it. So if you are waiting for the teacher, you're in the wrong room. Teacher's already here. I've already got things running. So you can go to Socrative and have a look at that. In fact, I have a question already up and running right now. How long have you been studying for your Network Plus certification? This is a good run through so we can see, is this going to work or not? There's the Socrative URL. There is the room name, Professor Messer, and you can go and have a look at that as well. There is, once you get there, you'll see questions. So you'll see something like this. How long have you been studying for your Network Plus certification? And you can answer actually more than one question. This is really one that's designed for a single answer, and the responses might be less than 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, 9 months to a year, over 1 year. We'll make it so you can see it over 1 year, and I already have my Network Plus certification. So we can go through and figure those out. Once you get there and answer, I'll be able to see your responses like this. So I can see that most of us, the majority, the 51% of us, now it's gone to 49 as soon as I say that are in there, the Socrative and are voting on these things, have been studying for your Network Plus for less than 3 months. It's a great time to actually study and start studying for your Network Plus because the N10006 has just been released. We'll talk about that in a moment. And it's a really good time to start fresh and get the latest Network Plus certification. Of course, it's also a good time to take the old one as well. You can take both of them at the same time right now, which is interesting. So the top three here are really the first three, less than 3 months, 3 to 6 months, and 6 to 9 months. So we've got a bunch of you that are kind of just getting started with this. Now, my people are down here at over a year. It takes me a while to take a certification exam. It takes me a long while to take a certification exam. So I'm usually somebody who starts and then who stops and then starts again as life gets in the way. And a number of you are here, already have your Network Plus certification. If you follow along today, I'll give you a keyword sometime during the presentation, during this first hour, that you can use to send me and get continuing education units. So keep your ears open for that. Now, I mentioned that the Network Plus exam was just updated. So you can, of course, learn more about this. By the way, for those of you watching on YouTube right now, there's a live chat on the Professor Messer website. It's at the bottom of every page. You can't miss it. If you go to professormesser.com/live, however, you'll both see the video and have the chat on the screen at the same time. You can pop the chat out and do other things with it, of course, but if you're watching on YouTube, you're missing a whole chat thing that we've got going on right now. Hello, chat room. This is the Network Plus, the current state of the Network Plus certification. So one of the things that CompTIA does is every 3 years they update their certifications. So every 3 years you tend to get an A+, you tend to get a new Network Plus, a Security Plus. It's not to the day, but it's in that general time frame, about every 3 years. They like to update it. So they've just updated the Network Plus. They updated it on February 28th. So the brand new exam is out. Now, if you're someone who has been studying for the N10005, which was the previous version of this exam, it was released in December 10th, you've still got time. It won't be retired until the 31st of August. I think that's the end of August, isn't it? So that is one of those where you're going to be fine if you're still studying for the N10005. Just make sure you take the exam and pass it before the end of August. And if you do that, you'll get the Network Plus certification. You can, of course, take the new version right now, the N10006, and pass that, and you get exactly the same certification. So it doesn't matter which exam you take. You get exactly the same piece of paper, exactly the same credentials. Neither of them say which version of it you took. You just take the one that's there. So they tend to have this secondary or extra time, 6 months of time or so, where you can get in there, take the exam, and you'll be just fine. So don't worry about which one you take. Take the one that makes sense. I think if you're just starting, however, in studying, I always recommend you take the latest exam. It's going to have the latest content. It's going to have the latest materials, the things to know, and you almost have a little bit of bragging rights over someone who took the previous version of the exam. I know that I told you get the same exam, but it's kind of nice to say, no, I actually took the new one. It has all the new content and all the new security pieces and all the new everything. So make sure you have a look at that and understand more about it. Well, we're working here with our Socrative. I think it's time now to start asking questions about Network Plus. So let's get into the details of these Network Plus questions. If you're in Socrative, you will see the question change. No answering in the chat room, please. But our first question of the day, which OSI layer is most associated with TCP and UDP ports? There's a last section of the 006. I think it's the first section of the 005, where you're asked about the OSI model. And the OSI model, I think for a lot of people who are starting with the networking side of things, the OSI model tends to be a little bit of a challenge. It's this odd representation of what's happening with ones and zeros that are going through the air or across a piece of copper or inside of a piece of fiber. There's not something you can really grasp. It's not like you can touch it and feel it. It's a concept. It's a model. And on top of that, it's a model where some things kind of fit into different layers of the model. Sometimes a particular function or protocol or process might be part of a layer, or it might extend across multiple layers. But fortunately, on the Network Plus exam and on the Security Plus exam, the OSI piece is very clear cut. So I don't think anybody can really argue with some of the things that are on the OSI. Well, in this case, I'm asking for a very specific piece of information, which OSI layer is most associated with TCP and UDP ports. And in this case, it's very unambiguous in our particular industry for this. This is one where there is absolutely a layer. Now, in this case, I put all 7 layers up. So this is not like a multiple choice where maybe 4 of the 7 are presented to you. So you really need to know your OSI model to be able to answer which OSI layer, because I'm asking all of the OSI layers on this. So let's see how we did. 52, 53 of you have answered. Let's see what we answered, and then we'll look more about what this is. Oh, we got a little mix of things here. So 2% said layer 1. We had 11% said layer 2. It looks like the big fight is between layer 3 and layer 4, although the majority of us did say layer 4, and then a couple of people said 5 and 6. Nobody said layer 7. Poor layer 7, kind of left out in the cold there. So which is the OSI layer that would be most associated with TCP and UDP ports? Well, it would be useful if we could go in and understand where those happen to be. And layer 4 is what we call the transport layer of the OSI model. And the transport layer is where we fit those TCP port numbers and those UDP port numbers. You can think of this as more of the post office layer that's sending and receiving information and putting it in exactly the right box. We know that we're sending information to a city. We might even be sending it to a particular street, but you need to get right in the box. In fact, we'll go up to the house and there may be multiple people in the house. We need to determine who in the house gets this particular letter. And that's what the layer 4 transport layer is. That's where TCP and UDP fit into the big scheme of things. This is also the layer, especially with TCP, where you have things broken into smaller pieces, sent across the network, and then put back together. So it's one of these cases where you might be sending an enormous web page. Well, you can't just put that web page on the Ethernet and send it across. Ethernet can't handle the size of it. We have to cut it up into smaller blocks, send it across the network. On the other side, put the blocks back together. TCP has a list of exactly what goes in what order. So this is layer 4. If we're dealing with OSI layer 4, and you're the people that answered D, layer 4, you 61% of you got that one absolutely right. I think that was a good kickoff for the questions that we have today. But let's jump to the next one, since we're going to shotgun a few through here. I'll click here and you'll see this again. No answering in the chat room. But my question deals specifically with a type of network. It is, which of these standards is most associated with the data networking standard on a cable TV system? Cable TV system and data networking, not something that we really thought would go together. And as it turns out, yellow and blue make green pretty well. So this is one where you do have to know what the standards are. I've got a number of standards to choose from. You could choose Radius, you could choose WiMAX, you could choose Sonnet, ATM, RTP, DOCSIS. So there's quite a list of things here. This is one of those where you do have to know what your standards are. Even if you don't know what all these abbreviations mean, you should certainly have an idea of how they are used. Sometimes I forget what radius means. Remote, internet, blah, blah, blah. Nope, I can't remember. One of those things. You're looking at it, and I know what it is. I use it all the time. I reference it in conversations. Now I have to remember what the abbreviation is? Not necessarily. As long as you know what it does, you'll be able to answer this particular question. So what you want to do is go out to Socrative.com. You want to be able to visit the room name, or I guess they're calling it now a teacher code of Professor Messer. To go in there. Doesn't rhyme when I do it that way. Professor Messer. Professor Messer. Just have to spell it right. Put it in there and you'll be able to answer this along with everyone else. So no Googling. Stop Googling. No, come back to the video. No Googling. What is this data standard on a cable TV system? This is one that is useful to know on the Network Plus in I think section 1 or section 2 of the N10006. There are a lot of different network types you need to know. And there are a lot of new things that have been thrown into the Network Plus certification. This is actually a concept that was also on the older Network Plus. In fact, the options that you have here, this is one for both N10006 and N10005. So this would definitely apply to the things that you're looking at or working towards. So let's see how we did. Let's see how do we do. Oh, we're all over the place with this one. I guess if we visually, we can see 40% of us said DOCSIS, but we don't have a clear majority. 8% said Radius, 9% said WiMAX, 17% said Sonnet, 13% said ATM. We had a few people, 11% said RTP. I guess if we had to choose the most popular one, we would go with DOCSIS. But since we're all over the place, what could it possibly be between all of these? Well, the clear and unambiguous answer in this particular case is DOCSIS. This is the standard that has been applied to putting data on a network that up to this point only had video images on it. In fact, it had only analog video images for the most part. We added digital to these different cable modem infrastructures, and we added data to that as well. Kind of goes hand in hand, doesn't it? Putting digital video on a wire and having a digital signal from the internet, effectively the same thing, isn't it? So if we start looking at this, we know that the DOCSIS standards have actually changed over time as well. DOCSIS, by the way, data over cable service interface specification. And if you talk to somebody who is in your local cable television, they know what DOCSIS is. That's an enormous, important standard that they are using. The DOCSIS standard 3.1 is one of the most recent that have been released in October 2013, but there are always newer ones that come out. So there might even be a newer one since then. They tend to release these updates, though, as major updates. It's not something they're updating every month. So certainly you'll probably watch a replay of this and say, well, that's an old version of DOCSIS. A newer version is out. And that may absolutely be the case because they're constantly changing and improving it. In fact, this one has support for 10 gig downstream speeds. Is anybody getting 10 gig speeds on their cable modem connection? Me either. And 1 gig upstream speeds. I wouldn't mind that. But what's important of that is that now they're going to have definitely increased speeds over a cable modem network. There was a comment I saw on an article that appeared to be legitimate recently that talked about, for instance, Comcast, one of the largest cable providers in the United States, will be upgrading all of their systems to the latest DOCSIS standards. And when they do that, they plan on at least having the capability in many markets to provide 1 gig access for an individual user, which would be awesome. I think there's a lot of competition right now. I have a LEC that's in my particular area, a local exchange carrier. The local exchange carrier, I have seen them putting fiber in the ground. So certainly they're going to work on giving 1 gig speeds. That tends to be the one everybody's shooting for right now competitively, is those 1 gig speeds. And I think that that Google's networks, Google has been doing an amazing job with Google Fiber at providing those additional speeds. So this is also something that provides multiple services as well. The set-top boxes we have now have so many different capabilities. It's because they're able to send all of this information through the network in a digital form. Gives them a lot more control. They can give me a better looking picture. And now I'm able to do amazing things with my internet connections. So if you are somebody who has answered, in this case, FDOCSIS, you would be correct. Radius is tends to be an authentication method. It is one where you are able to type in a username and password, and the Radius protocol communicates to a Radius server that then authenticates you. So that would not be the case in this case for data networking over cable TV. WiMAX is a networking standard. That's a wireless standard, and certainly not over a cable TV system. Sonnet over fiber. It may be that your cable TV might be using Sonnet on the back end, but that is not the data networking standard on your cable TV system. That might connect different components of cable TV behind the scenes. You also have ATM, RTP. Those are separate networking protocols. The ATM is a infrastructure topology type protocol, and RTP, the real-time protocol used for voice over IP. So there's a lot going on with networking names and things you need to know. It's useful if you can look at some of those abbreviations and know immediately what those abbreviations mean. So try to work along those ways to be able to have that piece, instantly understandable. You got to look at that abbreviation. Even if you don't know what it is, I know what it means. I know what it refers to. I know the technology behind the scenes. And I think that would be one that helps as well. Let's do another question, shall we? Let's go to this question. No answering in the chat room. Question is, which of these would be most associated with NAC? I have these two-step questions whenever I give these to you. I try to put something in the question itself that is going to have you think about what that means. It's important to me that the questions are very unambiguous, that they are asking for a very specific thing, and it's important to me that the answers are also unambiguous. They need to be very specific. You shouldn't look at the answers on an exam and wonder, is it this one or the other one? In this case, you have to know what NAC is, because I'm asking you which of these would be most associated with NAC. And the second step of this is all of these different things: 802.1x, SMTP, 802.11, proxies, SSH, and 802.3. There's a lot of different technologies here. So we have to understand what all of these technologies are, and then we have to understand how they apply back to network access control. You can find out if you know the answer. You can answer in our Socrative chat room in real time. For those of you watching the live feed at Socrative.com, go to the room name. It may ask you teacher code for Professor Messer. Make sure you type that right for the Professor Messer piece. So it is one of these where you will probably use this. If you are someone who is going to be working in networking, NAC is going to be pretty important. You're going to at least use some aspect of NAC. So it would be useful if you have this here. I think in the chat room, everybody's saying that I don't know if the test is really as unambiguous. I think there are always opportunities with certification exams to provide us with less ambiguous questions and answers. But I find a lot of times that the problem I have with questions is because I really didn't understand what I was talking about. If you're trying to question yourself, I think the vast majority of these CompTIA exams are right on the money. Somebody the other day was saying or asking what is this? I don't understand what's asking me. It's a trick question. It's not a trick question. It's a trick question because you don't actually understand what they're asking. Sometimes they're really going in and trying to provide you with a very specific path. And so you have to read the questions very, very, very carefully. It really helps to be able to do that. So let's now go through and see how we did on this particular question. Which of these would be most associated with the NAC? How do we answer? Again, we've got kind of a mix of different things. 802.1x, again, the popular answer. Is it the right answer? Because a number of you said 802.11, proxies, and SSH, and a smaller percentage said SMTP and 802.3. So there's a lot of things to be able to work with on the network access control side. Let's talk about network access control. That's what the NAC is in NAC is network access control. It's a way to provide security at a port level, as a physical port level, not TCP or UDP port, but a physical port level on a switch. You're able to make sure that the people who are physically connecting to your network or connecting to your network over wireless are really supposed to be there. If you're an organization that has network interface connections in a conference room or in a closet somewhere, and someone can just walk up with their device and plug in and gain access to your internal network, then you are not running network access control. If you were, that you'd probably be presented with a username and password prompt, or it would be able to at least use the same login method that you use for everything else in your organization. This takes extensive use of authentication protocols like EAP, like Radius, like Leap. There's many different ways to actually do the authentication with network access control. This is one where generally we see things like Radius and EAP really taking the full brunt of the work for network access control. You could also, of course, for port security, enable and disable ports. That's a good best practice to be able to do that. And I think the switches these days are even smart enough to look at what MAC addresses are going back and forth. If somebody's trying to take advantage of the authentication that you've already done by spoofing your MAC address, it'll notice that you're not on the same port that you were before to be able to do that. So this is one of those times where I think network access control and the concepts behind network access control become extremely important, and you will absolutely need to know that process for the exam. The actual network access control piece is pretty impressive. So by the way, if you were one of the people, network access control is definitely 802.1x. So if you're one of the people that answered that 802.1x, you would be absolutely correct. Network access control is pretty interesting, actually. If you connect to a network that has network access control, it splits up the process into three pieces. There's you. You are the supplicant, is the name. It's the formal name used in this network access control 802.1x standard. There is an authenticator. This is the thing you're going to talk to. You never talk to the authentication server that's on the back end. It is effectively separated from you and absolutely you don't ever deal with specifically talking to an authentication server. In fact, when you first connect, you really have to wait for the authenticator to send a message that says, has anybody connected lately? Is anybody on the network right now? Your machine just arrived, so it's going to respond back, oh yeah, I'm here. I'm on the network, so I'm somebody new. My name's James. I'm on the network. Hi, how are you? The authenticator then takes control here and tells the authentication server, hey, James just got here. The authentication server says, well, good. See if he has the proper authentication to log into the network. So there's an extra step to provide that authentication piece. The authenticator says, well, I checked in with the authentication server. He wants to see if you're legit. Hand me some username, password, whatever authentication credentials we're using. Okay, well, here's my username. Here's my password. If I have a third-party token that I'm using to get in, I provide all that information to be able to do that. The authenticator then provides that to the backend authentication server, and the server says, oh, okay, well, that all checks out. You seem to be who you say you are, so we're going to let you onto the network. The authenticator then says, great, you're now allowed access, and you can get into the network. There's a lot there. So before we go to the next step here, I want to let everyone know that if you did answer A, 802.1x, you got that one absolutely right. Let me take a moment. So I just saw this come up. Take a moment and let you know about my Network Plus course notes. Whether you're taking your 005 or your 006, I've taken all of the notes from all of my videos, all of the graphics, the tables that are in my videos, the command lines and the flags for the command lines. I put them all in one set of course notes. And I have those course notes for sale. It's a PDF file. You can buy it and have it immediately downloaded. It's not a protected PDF, so you can download it and print it out if you'd like. You can put it on your mobile devices. You can put it on your laptop. You can put it on your desktop, anywhere you happen to be, so that you can study for your exam and get that information. So I tried to put as much as possible into these course notes. They are extensive, and they're generally in the same structure and format as my videos, and they follow the same format as the exam objectives. So I try to start the very beginning and go to the very end. So if you're someone who's trying to get these details into their head and figure out how am I going to remember all of this stuff, that's the way to do it, is to work along those lines and have that there. If you're trying to remember all of those different command line options, you may be asked how to perform a particular function with the command lines. It's in here. I tried to put as much in here as possible. And I think the 006 study guide, how many pages did this turn out to be? It was 15 pages. So it's a ton of information, all chock full inside of those course notes. And it's only $10. If you want to see the 006 course notes, it's professormesser.com/n10-006-course-notes. I should make that easier, shouldn't I? Or just go to the Professor Messer website. There's a menu right at the top. You can go to Network Plus and choose course notes, and you can get those. I have course notes, of course, both for the 005 and the 006 exam. You will want to buy the one that makes sense for you. You always want to study from the version of materials that matches the exam that you're going to take. If you're going to take the 006, you don't need the 005 books and materials. You need something that really, really matches. There's just enough that is different now between these two that you don't want to study for one and then go take the other. You will immediately be at a disadvantage. Don't do that. So make sure you get the right ones when you're working through these pieces. So thanks for having a look at those. Thanks for supporting those. For those of you that already have the course notes, by the way, thank you so much. I cannot tell you how much it helps keep things running here. I can concentrate on making more videos and keeping the websites running, and you're effectively helping support what we do here. So thank you so much for all of that. Let's keep going with our questions. I've got more questions for you. So no answering in the chat room. Next question is, which of these protocols, did I do another one? Oh, we're doing a lot of user authentication today. I take the questions that we get from the things you send me. I ask for the people registering, what do you want to know about? And so here's another one. We're gonna get off the user authentication track here in just a bit, I promise. But this one is talking specifically about user authentication. So you need to, this is another one where you need to understand the acronyms. There are a lot of acronyms in the Network Plus exam. This is a very good example of that. Which of these protocols would commonly be associated with user authentication? IPsec, PEEP, SHA, SNMP, HTTP. Quite a mix of different ones there. There are, if you look at the exam objectives, and we'll do that before we're done today, there are so many acronyms on the Network Plus exam. And it's probably very similar I think whenever you get into networking, to most other networking exams, networking in general just has a lot of acronyms. There's a lot of new technologies. There's a lot of new things to learn, and they all are abbreviated for some reason. Thus is technology, isn't it? So go out to Socrative.com and go to the Professor Messer Room and see if you know the answer to this one. I'm going to take a peek real quick. Is that bad that I'm peeking into this to find out? It's going to be a good one. I like it when I'm asking a question and people are going, which one is that? I'm not quite sure. The answers, the possible answers, again, IPsec, PEEP, SHA, SNMP, HTTP. So you do have to know what those are. Yes, acronyms are my biggest downfall as well. My problem is I remember the acronym and then I forget what it means, which is not good in my particular line of work. It's helpful if I can actually explain what it is when I'm talking about it. And I will now, when I'm doing a video, you'll note, here's a little thing. Here's a little behind the scenes for you, for those of you that watch my training videos. When I go to the acronym, I never trust myself anymore because I get it wrong. I tell you the wrong, if you go back to don't do this. Go back to old videos. I'll tell you the wrong thing. I'll instead of using internet, it's actually infrastructure, or instead of data, it's domain. I get something wrong in the name because I don't even think about it. So now you'll notice whenever I'm telling you the acronym, I'm looking at the screen in front of me instead of looking at you and saying, and that's why IPsec stands for IP security. I know it's IP security, but I feel like I have to look every time now. So there you go. There's a little behind the scenes. Let's see how we did with this one. 62 of you. Oh, we've got something going on here. We've got a couple of things happening. So I think we have two that are really the two that people are looking at. So we've got IPsec and PEEP kind of took the top two. And then we've got SHA, SNMP, and HTTP kind of taking out single digits. So if we go with popularity, it's tough. I guess IPsec is the most popular, but we're really talking here about user authentication. Now, I was feeling bad that I had another user authentication question for you. Now I'm kind of glad I have one. Let's step through different kinds of user authentication. Let's first talk about one called EAP. This is an extensible authentication protocol. See how I just looked at the screen when I did that? EAP is used for authenticating, it's used in many different places. It's used in 802.1x. It's used in wireless technologies. It's used on wired technologies. It's used in a lot of different things. It is a very standardized framework. So that's why I think a lot of authentication methods will use EAP, because it's something that everybody can develop to. There are libraries for it. The devices understand it. For instance, WPA and WPA2 there are 5 different EAP types that they use just for authentication. And there's many different to be able to do that. There's another authentication type called PEEP. PEEP stands for Protected Extensible Authentication Protocol. PEEP it looks like this little chick right here. It's one that takes EAP and takes it to the next level. So we often refer to EAP as EAP or EAP. We refer to this as PEEP. And it is one where you've got Cisco, Microsoft, and RSA working together to make this happen. I think there's so many times in our industry where we do something, it just isn't enough. So in this particular case, it was extended to make it even more protected. What it does is take that EAP and it encrypts it, effectively puts it in what we think of as SSL, which is really TLS. So it puts it in TLS. This means there's going to be some certificates involved. If you've ever set up a web server with SSL and you've had to have encryption certificates on the server, similar scenario. You have to have encryption certificates on that back end that you're communicating with. But as long as you have that, the PEEP would work fine. So let's go back and see how we did. Well, we know that the majority, the largest number, not even a majority, but the larger number, 49%, said IPsec. IPsec it stands for IP security. And although there are authentication mechanisms within IPsec, we don't associate that with user authentication. IPsec is a way to tunnel and encrypt information from one site to another or from one user to another. So that is more of an encryption and tunneling method than it would be authentication. PEEP is, obviously, we just talked about the authentication mechanism. That is your correct answer. If you answered B, you'd be absolutely correct. SHA is a hashing type. SNMP is a simple network management protocol. HTTP is obviously our hypertext transfer protocol that we use for web traffic. So those of you that you didn't choose C, D, or E, you were right on the money. If you picked IPsec, I could see where you were going with that, but IPsec is absolutely an encrypted tunnel. There's so much to IPsec, probably not even talking about IPsec today. But if we're talking specifically and commonly be associated with, there's your key words in the question, which one is commonly associated with user authentication? Your best answer here is going to be B or PEEP. Don't feel bad if you did not get the answer correct. That means you just learned something. So there's always an opportunity for learning, and that was a good one, I think, to go through those pieces. Let's see the next question then. Let's go to another one. Now, finally, I'm not asking you a question that has anything to do with user authentication. This one's more routing. We're getting into the network, getting into the routers talking to each other. And many people, this is networking. If you're not configuring routers on a WAN, you're not networking, which is not true, by the way. But a lot of people think that way. I think it's a fun part of networking, though. There's a lot of interesting parts about interoperability between these different devices that we have out there. This question is, which of these best describes not sending router advertisements over the interface where they were originally learned? Now, I have to tell you that I rewrote this question about 20 times. I never really liked it, but I think this was the best one of those 20 that I did. And I think if you listen to how I inflect, you'll see what I'm trying to say. Which of these things best describes not sending router advertisements over the interface where they were originally learned? So we have to think about this. Is that EIGRP? Is it default route? Is it border gateway? Is it split horizon? Is it distance vector? It's one of these. Those are all router type things, aren't they? Those are all router stuffs. So we want to understand about routing, and it's important to understand how these routing things happen. Let's see if I can't fit everything on the screen. Can I? Can kind of do that without my big head there and see the question. Yeah, there we go. Which of these best describes not sending router advertisements over the interface where they were originally learned? Routing is not just important for your Network Plus. If you plan on going to the next step with networking and going to a vendor-specific networking certification, you're absolutely going to need to know this. You will be asked this. This is a very common router configuration setting. So this is an important one to know. I think this would be a good one to have there. This would be good to also know regardless of the router. I think I was working with routers back in the day. There were routers, we set them up. They ran on wood and coal. And when we set those up, routers I set up 25 years ago had this capability inside of them. So this is one of those things that's very useful to know. Of course, don't answer in the chat room. So we are working along these lines to be able to figure out these. Go to Socrative.com. You can figure these out yourself as well. And once you go to Socrative.com, you can go to the Professor Messer room. Make sure you spell it right. Take a sip of my beverage while we are waiting to have you guys answer. A lot of you answered already. We're up to 54. Let's look at these answers again. Let's see if I can click the right button. There they are. So what would the answer be here? We start working with these different technologies. It really gets crazy. All of these different pieces. There is only one answer here that is the best description of not sending router advertisements over the interface where they were originally learned. How do we do? Whoa, we're all over the place. Awesome. We can go through here and figure this stuff out. We can learn something today. So now it's fun. So 34% of you said EIGRP, 14% said default route, 24% said border gateway, 19% said split horizon, 10% said distance vector. Well, there are a number of things you have to look for when configuring in a router. I'm going to change something on my screen here to make this a little bit easier to read. You can't see this on your side, but I'm going to set this up so we can view it a little bit better. So on this question, we're going to go right to the answer. So if you're trying to figure out which one of these is it, let's talk about split horizon. Now, split horizon is a setting that you use when you're configuring routing protocols inside of your router, and it does effectively what we were just talking about. We are receiving router advertisements from other routers that are out there in the world that are connecting to us. And it's telling us, hey, here's some routes out there. And what we do when we grab those routing advertisements is we put them into a table. And we list out, okay, I see routers are out there. I'm going to say if I need to get to any of these networks, I'll go out that interface because you just advertised to me that that's where they are. Now, obviously, this can be very involved, especially if there's a redundant connection and you're getting other advertisements on a separate interface from a different router with a different set of metrics to get there. That's how we would create a process for having a redundant link. You can obviously only really go out one connection to a site. We're not going to talk about ECMP in this. You people that are now ready to send me an email about equal cost multipath. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a very basic level what split horizon does. Since we have this sending us this message inbound, there's no reason to advertise back to that person that you know where that route is. So one of the options you can have is to not send the person what they just told you. Otherwise, it's like a Rain Man. He's saying, here's 5 routes. Oh, well, here's the 5 routes you just gave me. Well, along with other things. Well, I just gave you those 5 routes. I can minimize the number of things I'm sending to you if I'm not repeating back to you what you just told me. So that's the idea behind split horizon. There are times when you do want to advertise back to that particular location. So split horizon isn't always the best thing you could do, but it's certainly an option. And the Network Plus doesn't get into the nuances and the intricacies of setting up routing protocols and when you would use split horizon and when you would not. You would only need to know why split horizon is important to you. Now, there's a lot of other things to consider when you are working with configuration problems on a router. But for this particular question, split horizon was our answer. So if you answered EIGRP, which is a Cisco-ish, very Cisco-centric routing protocol, that would not be it. That is a protocol that is used to send information from one router to another. It is not the method for effectively filtering out router advertisements. Default route is the route you would use to get to a particular location. Specifically, when we're talking about routers and nothing else is in the routing table, where do you send this? You send it to your default route. You generally don't advertise default route anyway. So that is not one, certainly not involved in not sending a router advertisement over where it was learned, because you don't learn a default route for the most part. And again, I know there's times when you do, people out there that are very network centric. I promise you, I'm with you. We're together on this one. Okay. Border Gateway. I specifically took this from the Border Gateway Protocol, BGP, which is an exterior gateway protocol that primarily we use to provide dynamic routing over the internet. So it's not Border Gateway. And Distance Vector is a type of routing protocol. It's a way that we determine metrics and how we measure how far away a particular location is so that we can then make routing decisions on what interface we use to get to that remote site. And that is one where split horizon, in this case, if you know all 4 of those others and you didn't know split horizon, you would at least be able to get rid of those and say, in this case, it's split horizon. We're taking the horizon, we're splitting out pieces, we're sending it back. I guess that's one way to think about that. Now, this, I think, this is taken directly from the N10006. I'm not sure split horizon is part of the 005 requirement. So if you're studying 005, I'd have to go back and look at my exam objectives. I have been so deep in the N10006 now for months, and we are in the process, the video production process for the 006 videos. I can't even remember this. I don't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. I definitely don't, off the top of my head, remember if that was in 005. It may have been, it may not have been. I don't specifically recall. But I'll tell you in a moment how you can absolutely try that yourself. Okay, that was a good routing question. I think we did pretty well. 19% of you did absolutely correct on that one. Let's do another question, shall we? Here's another question for you. This one where we've got another type of technology we need to know about. In which of these cases would you be most likely to use diffserv? It's these questions where they throw in the most likely that I think drive people crazy. The most likely is definitely the important part here, because you've got a number of things to choose from. First, of course, you have to know what diffserve is. And then what is diffserve? Is that the case where, I can scroll some of this up a little bit. Is this where we would create redundant server connections? Would we use diffserve to determine quality of service? Would we use diffserve to manage remote network devices? Would we provide secure remote desktop services? Or would we use it to back up modified server files? Lock in your answers now. The exam piece for the N10006 goes into more detail. So while everybody's mulling over those, everybody's saying we're throwing darts. We're not mulling. We're just trying to figure it out. Never heard of it. What is it? What could that possibly be? diffserve. I'm right there with you. It's a really good question. So I'm going to go to my 005. Do I have my exam objectives handy? I do. And we're going to look for a couple of things on my exam objectives. You don't see this on your side. diffserve is not listed in those exam objectives. That was a scratch. That was not a pick. It's a scratch. There is, what was the other one we're going to look at? Oh, we're going to look at split horizon. Was that in the 005 objectives? It was not. So these are definitely something you would see in the 006. This is one of those times where brand new technologies, as I mentioned, are applied into the exam. And this is certainly cases where you will find that. Good example, if you were studying for the 006, you're going to plan to take the 006 exam, and you were studying a book that had on the front N10005, or you were watching my videos for N10005, these would be topics that would probably be never presented to you. You might get them on your exam, and then you'd have no idea what they were. So that's another one of those things that really can help with understanding those pieces of it. There is a number of you answered on this one. 64 of 117 have answered so far. Should we try it? Should we see how you did on this particular one? I think we've had a good opportunity here to do this. Let's see how we did on this one. Wow, another time we've kind of got a mix of three here to do diffserve to make these pieces happen. In which cases would you most likely use diffserve? So would you be most likely to use diffserve? I could probably have made that sound a little better. Create redundant network connections, server connections, 22%, 42%, 41%. I guess this is the one with the most popular would be determine quality of service. We have single digits on manage remote network devices and provide secure remote desktop services. 23% said backup modified server files. Well, it's got to be one of these, isn't it? This whole idea of diffserve. If somebody comes to you and says, diffserve, we need you to research and get us more information on diffserve, then they're talking about quality of service. There's a number of, and I got to tell you, I've done quality of service for years and years and years and years. I've worked with many different ways of doing quality of service and integrating with many different ways of doing quality of service. And some methods use very standardized forms to do the quality of service. Some methods have nothing to do with protocols. So you may study these quality of service mechanisms, and then you might put a device in your network that doesn't even follow these. So that's just the way networking works, doesn't it? That's how you do with these things. QoS, if you see anything that talks about class of service, it's referring to header bits that are available in a .1Q trunk. If you don't know what a .1Q trunk is, I've got other videos for you on the N10005 and 006 that talks about an 802.1Q trunk. This is usually something you do inside of your own organization. This is not something where you're going outside and having a third party provide you with quality of service. This is something you're configuring on a trunk inside of your organization, because you generally don't trunk outside of your organization. So if you see the COS, class of service bits, we're really talking about the bits in those trunked frames. There is also something called diffserve. There's the diffserve. This is in the IPv4 header. We're looking at IP version 4 and looking at the header information. It's right in there. There's some bits there. Obviously, because they're in the header, it's kind of external to the application that's in use. We're relying on your infrastructure equipment to set the bits. Sometimes your software is setting the bits and sending it on its way. And then whatever receives those frames, in this case, even the packets for IP version 4, has to be able now to look at those bits and understand what to do with them. If a device has not been configured to work with diffserv, it will ignore them. And everything just really runs at whatever it runs at on the network. There's no quality of service. You can't set priorities. But if you have configured a router or switch or another device on your network to interpret the diffserv bits, then you can start prioritizing certain applications over others. So your voice over IP will continue to work properly. You'll have a nice, clear phone call. And at the same time, you're downloading the latest Linux distribution. So you're using tons of bandwidth, but you've got devices that are segmenting out and limiting how much you can do with certain applications and priorities others have. There's also something called DSCP, Differentiated Services Code Point. That's in the IP header itself. Generally, we don't see QoS everywhere. You'd think you'd want to do it everywhere, wouldn't you? You'd think you'd have QoS running at every possible place. And we don't tend to do as much as you might think, I think because of the complexities involved with this. Many times we'll use a third-party product like a firewall to provide quality of service or router to provide quality of service. Many times you just have a separate, this is how a lot of people do it. I'll take my voice over IP phones, put them on a separate VLAN, send them out that way. I'll take all my other data, send it out that way. We won't even worry about quality of service, which I can't argue with that. Keeping things simple is certainly an option as well. So I think that's whenever you see COS, diffserv, or anything relating to those, it would be quality of service, or the DSCP is quality of service that we're really talking about, and setting priorities for different applications. Well, there is also something I want to take a moment and talk to you about the performance-based questions on the Network Plus certification. There are going to be network-based performance question, Network Plus performance-based questions on your exam. You're going to run into times where it's not just going to be a multiple choice question. You'll see on CompTIA's website, they tell you you're going to get a certain number of questions, a maximum number. Many of these will be multiple choice, but some of them are going to ask you something beyond multiple choice. They might be fill in the blank. They might be matching. They might pop you into a separate screen at a command prompt and tell you perform this particular function. In fact, for those of you that, let me see if I can find this past week, CompTIA released a new video, finally, that talks about taking the CompTIA exam and how this works. And I think I've got a link to this here that I can show you real quick. Here we go.
Are you wondering what it's like to take a CompTIA
I
exam?
am wondering.
This video will show you.
Okay, we're going to skip ahead, Mr. Person. So it goes through what these screens are and what you would expect to see. Like they got a calculator on the screen. Oh, look, it even pops up a picture of a Texas Instruments calculator. What's important in this video, though, and it's called Taking a CompTIA Exam. It talks about the question types you're going to get. So multiple choice, yes, we know. Here is a fill in the blank. Here's a drag and drop. Here is one where you have to do other performance-based. This is a simulation performance-based question. Boom, pop you off at the command prompt, and now you have to figure it out. So this, I think, is a point where a lot of people have a lot of anxiety. This is a bit of a challenge because you're used to doing multiple choice and bubbling those bubbles, but now you actually have to do something. And to be able to do it, you really need to understand more hands-on and what you're working with. And that's where Freestyle pops in. The Freestyle from GTS Learning, it provides you an entire Network Plus book, the GTS Learning Network Plus book, the same one I use to build the videos. I get GTS Learning's book to do that. So this comes with the book. It comes with practice questions. So you can run through a sample exam, a couple of sample exams, and gives you a simulator. It's not really even a simulator. It's a full-blown emulator. It's a virtual machine with labs that are already set up. So they give you, here's a task to go through to perform a packet capture, to understand how a penetration test might work, to work with running ping and trace route and those commands at the command line. And it's in a live network. You've got all of the resources you need to understand exactly what's going on. You can take packet captures of the entire thing as you go. It is all in one place. It's all in a virtual environment. You don't have to load any additional software on your computer if you're running a browser that knows about HTML5, which are all of our most recent browsers, of course. This is the way to go if you're trying to do this, and there's special pricing for this as well. If you go to the GTS Learning website, you'll pay more than this. If you follow my link, which is professormesser.com/netlabs, you pay $99. But don't pay $99 yet. You don't know if even this is going to work for you. So go out to follow this link and you'll get an hour free and you can try it. See if it's what you want. You can read through every lab. You can load up some of the virtual machines and try it out. It's a great way to have at any time out in the cloud. There is this entire lab sitting there waiting for you to use it. And if you're studying for your exam, this would be a great way to make that happen. So go ahead and have a look. Can't beat free for an hour. So maybe something to try and work with for your environment as well. We've got some time left. I want to very quickly, let's do one other question. I've got another question here. I think we should absolutely do it. And then I've got another thing to show you. We may go a little late today. Don't answer in the chat room, of course, but here's your next question. Which spanning tree state does not forward frames and does not add anything, doesn't do anything to the MAC address table? Spanning tree is one of those things you definitely have to know about on the 005 and the 006. So this is one of those times where you need to know this regardless of what version of the exam you're going to take. And I've got some options for you. Is this the blocking state? Is it the listening state? Is it the learning state? Is it the forwarding state? Especially in the version 6, the N10006 Network Plus exam, you have to know these states. You have to know them on the 005 as well, but they specifically wrote them out on the 006. So I think they're being very serious about them on this version. I'll talk about how I know that in just a bit. So get in there, answer that particular question. You go to Socrative.com, you can have a look at those pieces. Where's the 006 exam objectives? I know this because I downloaded the 006 exam objectives. You should do this. If you have not downloaded the exam objectives before you even started doing anything, then you're already behind the 8 ball. Go to professormesser.com/objectives and download the exam objectives. Here's why. First, it's going to tell you what percentage of what is on the exam. Well, 22% is network architecture, 20% network operations, et cetera, et cetera. But then as I scroll down a little bit further, they tell you everything you need to know. I don't think there's any other exam provider out there that gives this level of detail. CompTIA provides you with a bulleted list of everything you need to know about this. I'm just going to scroll through so you can see some of this. Some of this I've highlighted myself. I was making notes in here and doing other things with it. And I was just trying to get a feel for what's there. So all of these things, we talked about routing protocols earlier. We talked about all of these other pieces. There they are. All those things we were trying to figure out with routing is right there. There's the quality of service information. I need to know DSCP. I need to do COS. There it is. You know, that's the piece that now you understand why it's in the video, because it came directly from here. I use this as the list of things that I add to all of my videos. So if it's not on this list, it's not in the video. People sometimes send me a note and say, how come you didn't talk about this thing? Well, I didn't talk about it because they didn't list it. And if they don't list it, I'm not going to talk about it. My videos are very on point, very specific. We're finally to section 2. Look how much data is in here. Don't miss an opportunity. This is a great final checklist that you could use before you walk into your exam. Go through this list and start figuring it out. In fact, if you need to know spanning tree or rapid spanning tree, here's the different states that we're talking about right now. There's a really good example of how you should know these things. So let's see how we did with this particular question. Which spanning tree state does not forward frames and does not add to the MAC address table? It's got to be one of these, isn't it? Let's see how we did. Well, we're all over the place again. Well, I guess blocking and listening were the top 2. And then we've got learning and forwarding at 6% and 11%. So which one is it that is not forwarding frames, is not letting any traffic go by, and is not updating the MAC address table? Well, let's step through the different states and maybe we can figure this out. I happen to have a list of them right here. Go figure. The blocking state means that we are not forwarding any traffic at all. We're blocking on that. Usually once we have converged the network, certain ports will be in a blocked state. The one that is not forwarding and it's not adding to the MAC address table, in fact, it's cleaning out the MAC address table and clearing out everything, is the listening state. The learning state is still not forwarding, but it is adding things to the MAC address. It's learning about what else is out there on the network. Listening is just hearing stuff go by, but not doing anything with it. So it's at least having something come in, but we're not updating the MAC address table. Forwarding obviously would be actually sending the data out of an interface. And if we've administratively gone in and turned off an interface, I guess that technically is not a state of spanning tree, but it's certainly a state of the interface. So listening is when we are not forwarding and we're cleaning or not adding to the MAC address table on the listening side. So if you answered B, listening, you would have gotten that one absolutely correct. And if you are listening and you're trying to get a continuing education credit for this particular hour that you've spent doing this, you're going to want to send me an email that has somewhere in the message the word listening. And you'll see that at the top of the Professor Messer website, there's a Contact Us link. Just click on that link. You can put any message in there you like. I read through these, so if you want to put any note in there, that would be great. But somewhere in there, put the word listening. And you can do that whether you're watching live or whether you're watching this on a replay. I will send you back an email that has a little digital certificate. I hereby certify that you must have listened to this because you gave me that secret code word, and you can use that for your continuing education units if you already have the Network Plus certification. If you don't have the Network Plus certification, a CEU is not going to help you. They won't accept one until you start compiling this after your exam date. So you have to at least be that as well. So that's one of those times where having the understanding of spanning tree really helps in these particular pieces. The challenge with spanning tree, I think, is that there's so much to it. And I think what I tried to do in my video was make it a little bit more animated so that you can really follow the spanning tree process and the convergence of that. Fortunately for the Network Plus, you need a very high level view of spanning tree. You don't need a lot of detail with spanning tree as well. Well, that brings us to the end of an hour of Network Plus. There's a lot of content we went through in a very short period of time. I want to remind you again, for my Network Plus course notes, you can just go to the Professor Messer website. There is a pull down link at the top for Network Plus, and you can choose either the 005 or the 006 course notes to look at. Again, YouTube is a great place to go. If you don't have money for course notes and you're not buying the offline, you're just watching it online, one of the best things you can do to help support us is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can find that at professormesser.com/YouTube. I send an A+ pop quiz every day. I'm thinking of doing Network Plus pop quizzes. I said that earlier. And I think once I finish making the videos this time, we should start a mailing list up for that. I'll put that in Twitter when that happens. You've also got Google Plus, Facebook. Just put professormesser.com/something and you will get there. The GTS Learning Net Labs you can find at professormesser.com/netlabs. That gives you the special pricing, and try them out for an hour. See if that's what works for you. We do one of these every month. So I haven't set the date for the May study group, but you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar and find out when the next one of these is going to be so that you can join us live for the next one. I want to thank everyone for joining us live. If you are here live, we're going to close out the main part of the study group. We have an after show. I'll open up the phone lines in just a moment. But if you're leaving us, I want to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Network Plus study group. Thanks, everyone. Well, I need to get those phone lines open, don't I? That was, yes, I know the pop quizzes. It'd be so good to have pop quizzes for Network Plus. It's a very popular request. Popular. Let's see here. I need to now connect into my show. So let's do this funny thing that I do with Skype, which you can't see, but I can see. Here we go. To try to do this. Where is my contact list? And I need to host a show, and I need to start the show. There's all these buttons on my side to get the phone lines up and running. You'll see the phone lines. The numbers are on professormesser.com/live. And I will try to do this right now. Boop, 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 boop. But what's my show number? I have to remember everything. Yes. Well,
please enter your show number and press pound.
I will do that. I will put in my show number and press pound.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
That's a different person. I will put in my 6-digit PIN number.
Welcome, host.
Welcome. Hello. How are you? Now you can call in. The call-in number 855-785-RJ45. I think I've got a little diagram here. How can I put up that? There it is. There's the phone number. So if you want to call in, you can talk about anything. You can talk about routing. You can talk about Network Plus. You can talk about the new Star Wars trailer. Awesome. Don't geek me out on that. That's it's one of those things. That's one where you just have to appreciate the marketing, don't you? So well done. How do you know when the next study group is? There's nothing in the calendar. Well, there's nothing in the calendar, so there's not one currently. There will be one as soon as I figure out when it is. And we tend to do these on Saturdays, and I don't always know what I'm doing and when I'm doing it. So I will, as soon as I know what my schedule is, you'll know what my schedule is because it will go into the calendar. And I tend to send out a tweet on the Twitter, and I tend to put a Google Plus notification, and there's things at the top of the pages. And I think if you were on saw my Facebook and Google Plus, I did an event, calendar event for it, so you would have that popping up. Maybe some of you showed up here because of that. Those are there as well. There was a lot of detail today. I did too many user authentication questions, didn't I? I wore you down until the point where nobody knew what we were talking about anymore, and you were over it. You're just picking, it's A, whatever. It's A, all right? Can we not do these? Can we go do something else? I think that's where we were. So sorry about that. I will endeavor to spread these out and make them differently. I'd kind of like to do, I think Saturday's a good day for these. I just don't know if it always would work great on a Saturday for me. Sometimes I'd like to have a Saturday to myself, you know what I'm saying? But during the week can be more of a challenge. So I go back and forth. That's very funny how the chat room says, Brett says, I'm sure he has a life outside the studio. That's hilarious. I'm going to now go to the phone lines, except they hung up. So I'm not going to go to the phone lines. So never mind. The phone lines are open, 855-785-RJ45. This is something that also will be absolutely free if you use Skype. I pay for you to call me. Is that sad that I do that? That I pay for you to call me? I don't know. It's one of those things. So before this particular user has a chance to hang up again, we're going to go to the 661 area code. Are you there, caller?
Good morning, Professor Mercer.
It's Anthony. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing so good. Thanks for joining us again. So nice to hear from you.
Good. It's talking to you also.
What's up with you?
I have a question. I have a problem with my Outlook Express.
Oh, Outlook Express. Yes, please tell us.
I'm trying to send an email. Well, not an email, but actually I'm trying to send a book, an e-book, over the internet to somebody to review. And when I try to send it as an attachment, I get this question, this thing that comes up. It says, Outlook Express must break this message into parts of 256 kilobytes, which is larger than the current setting.
I'll bet it is. So you've got many things happening there, by the way. Of course, Outlook Express, for those of you that haven't been in the Microsoft world much for this, is a type of email client that Microsoft doesn't support anymore. And I have to say, thank you, Microsoft, for not supporting it anymore because it deleted a lot of my mail. I'm glad they got rid of it. But it is a challenge because it really was not designed for the things we do today, especially large attachments, some of the nicer HTML that you might get in an email. It just doesn't work very well. So there's a few things you can do, and I'll tell you what I do because I do transfer and communicate very large files to third parties. If you look around, there's no one here but me. I'm the only one in the studio. I am a company of one. I create, I produce, but there's a lot of things I don't do. I'm not going to do my own graphics. If I did my own graphics, it would be laughable. You would all have a good joke over graphics that I did. So I go to a third party and say, I need you to do, John Henry, I need you to do my graphics. And John Henry says, absolutely, send me what you'd like to do, and I'll send you back what the graphics look like. And these are pretty big files. We're talking in some cases tens of megabytes. I mean, big in email terms, tens of megabytes in size. So, and if you look at my study group, not my study group, my course notes, the raw course notes file I use are over a gigabyte in size. So these, I work with some big files. And of course, the files that we're going to make here today are going to be, 50 gig, 75 gig over the couple of hours. And if I wanted to have a third party edit that, I'd have to get it to them in some way. And I could tell you that Outlook Express is not a very good way to do it. You could probably have Outlook Express split it up and send it down the line, but I don't know if it would really come out on the other side the way you would like. I think a lot of the cloud-based storages that are out there are actually a better choice for doing this kind of thing these days. There are, of course, concerns with doing that, but there's the privacy or the security concerns you might have with putting something out in the cloud these days are probably a little better than sending it over email, quite honestly, since the email mechanisms are not exactly secure either. But I use things like the Google Doc, or not Google Docs, Google Files. Is one that I use. I've used, obviously, Dropbox is another good example. Box.com is a good example. Microsoft has their own integrated cloud-based storage as well. And what's nice about these is I can put this out in the cloud. I can edit the file because it's effectively synchronizing to my local storage. It has a local copy. It has the copy of that in the cloud. If I make a change to it locally, it updates the one in the cloud as well. And the one in the cloud I can set to be shareable. So I could say I'd like John Henry, who does all of my graphics, to have access to read and write this particular file, and send him an email, please, telling him that I've placed this file out on this storage for him to have a look at. So I don't even have to send an email. He gets a notification automatically that the share is available for him to connect to. He connects with his Google Drive connection, and then he has access to this, and I don't have to worry about it being chopped up or messed with. There are also secure mechanisms for this. There are third parties that do secure mechanisms. I used to do a lot of Citrix GoToMeeting. I don't do as much GoToMeeting anymore, but Citrix also has, what do they call their share file, which is a secure file sharing mechanism. It's one that is a commercial product. It costs money, unlike the Google or Microsoft or Dropbox or Box or any of those other pieces. But it's one that if you need something that's very private, that's a good way to do it. I just did my taxes. That was great. I enjoy that. For those of you not in the United States, in the U.S. on April the 15th, our annual federal taxes are due. I got mine in, no problem. But I had to send a lot of information back and forth to my accountant. And I wanted those to be private. It's not ShareFile, but he has a similar system set up where I can privately put these files in. They are in the cloud, but they're encrypted. And he's able to grab them and have a look at them. So I took pictures of all my receipts, and I put them into just a set of PDF files and stuck the PDF file out there, and we were able to share that way. We never sent them over email, which I think in that particular case was a pretty good idea. So he could tell me just how much money I had to pay, and then I cried for a couple days, and that was my week.
Okay. Yeah, because when I try to send this ebook, it starts sending, and then all of a sudden in the middle of the sending, it comes back with an error.
Yeah. And the problem now, especially with large attachments and even with Outlook Express,
it's about 36 pages.
Yeah, it's a relatively significant size. It's not a small, tiny text document, which of course is what email was designed to be. You might want to think about, and I understand this is a wholesale change, But you might want to think about getting away from Outlook Express because Microsoft does not support it anymore. There are bugs inside of Outlook Express. It will delete your email eventually because it does. That's how it works. We were all sort of used to that. Things like I guess Thunderbird is still supported if you really, really, really wanted to run a mail client on your desktop. The folks at Mozilla that make Firefox have an email client called Thunderbird. And I find that to be a pretty good email client if you want one on your desktop. I think these days, when I do send big attachments, I do everything I do now through Google Mail. I could also do it through Outlook.com. I could do it through Microsoft's, I guess Outlook.com would be Microsoft, Yahoo. Might want to use those.
I'm trying to send it through Windows Mail, and Microsoft Outlook all of a sudden pops up and says, "Oh, the attachment is too large.
Yeah,
it has to be broken down."
That's one of those cases, especially with the Outlook.
Can I just eliminate Outlook Express?
Sure, you can try a different email client like Thunderbird to see if that's going to solve the problem. If the limiting of the size is going to be on the ISP side, then none of these may work. It may be that the limiting of the size of the files is happening on your email provider, or your ISP may be your email provider.
Okay, an internet service provider. Okay.
So that's another case. Or you may just want to run everything through Google. Load up Google Mail. It's in a browser. There's nothing to have on your local desktop. It's easy to click the buttons there. It's so seamless. That is my business email, is Google Mail. And it's one where it's so easy. I send a lot of attachments. Most of my attachments are less than a megabyte in size, but they're PDF files. Sometimes they're bigger than that, and they go through just fine. I think I was sending some pictures the other day, and they were about 5 megabytes. No problem. Went right into my Google Mail and worked swimmingly. So those may be some different options for you as well.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for the information.
Let us know what works for you, and let us know if you do end up with a particular email client, or just let us know which one you chose, because it'd be interesting to see how that worked out for you.
Yeah, because I've been doing writing ebooks to put on ClickBank.
Okay, great.
That's basically what I've been doing, a little extra writing online and stuff like that. So
this is definitely an e-commerce thing for those of you not familiar with ClickBank. ClickBank is a site that allows you to sell digital products. At one point, very early on, I had a book that I authored on Nmap. I haven't updated it. I guess it's still a book that I authored. I haven't updated it recently. And I had that on ClickBank. What's nice about ClickBank, it gives you a place to sell your digital products. And even more useful is other people will see that your digital product is available for sale, and they can sell it as well. And then you give them an affiliate fee for doing that. So you might sell a product for $20, but if somebody else sells it, I'll give $10 of it to them. You get to decide how much, of course. And it's one that has been around forever and is used extensively by people that want to do these types of digital sales, especially if you don't have your own website. You're not interested in having some infrastructure available just so you can load up and have these things available. I think ClickBank's a good example of that.
Yeah, they've got something like 200 million items sold through them.
I wonder if my stuff is even still out there. I'm going to log in and see if I still even have those there. I haven't been there so long. I have to agree to the new terms and conditions.
They have also a new ClickBank University.
See, everybody's going.
Teach you how to do all the process.
That's brilliant. That's the way to do it. I think that's a great way to have that there. Yeah, that's even mine is there. I don't think I have any. Do I have any products in here? I still do have some products in there. My old book is still in there. I should probably disable that. But that's a good example. I was using this and taking advantage of those things. It was really a good option for some of the things I was doing. I have to go update addresses and other things in there. But that's a great thing to have there. It'd be great to hear how that goes for you as well, Anthony.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great minds, you move in the same path.
That's what I'm saying as well. Absolutely. Good luck with that.
Okay,
And We'll talk with you later. Thanks for calling, Anthony.
Okay, you have a good day.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm sorry for those of you that were calling and couldn't get through. We talked for a while there. Sorry about that. But you're welcome to call back. We can go through those pieces as well. I was using Outlook Express back in the day, and I must have had, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of emails it seems I had. I was really probably just thousands, but there were a significant number of emails, and it kept everything in one big database, and it was just a mess. And eventually it lost email messages for me. They just weren't there anymore. Part of their process of purging or whatever it did was buggy. And in fact, it was a known problem. It's just one of those things that happened. So I had a backup, brought everything back, got my backup, and then exported everything out. And ended up forwarding a good chunk of it off to Google Mail, and then just started doing everything in Google Mail. And we can have the conversation about, was that a good idea from a security perspective? We can have that conversation. Absolutely. Nobody can appreciate that more than I. But I don't tend to do anything in there that is too private. I try to do all of my private things in a secure file sharing, or like I did with my accountant, do it in something where I could just send in information to them over a private piece. So let's go back to the phones. We've got the 313 area code according to this. Are you there, caller?
Hello.
Hi, what's your name?
Hey, my name is Kenneth.
Hey, Kenneth. What can we do for you today?
My question has to do with the network plus exam. I had to the network plus exam about a month ago.
Okay.
Which I didn't do too fine. One of the questions on it was I had got was the purple space was I got a command prompt.
It's also important to know for the Network Plus is that just so everyone knows, and you probably know this as well, Kenneth, that there is a non-disclosure agreement when you take the exam that you're not able to give any details about the exam whatsoever. So if you have a very broad question about some of the technology, we can discuss that, but we can't talk about details of the exam or any specific questions that were on the exam. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so go ahead.
Okay. So on an example, refresh the question, but
right.
Like I have I'm using everything is typed in statically, but for the default gateway and the static route. But I need to reestablish a connection. I'm not familiar with all the different commands to use to establish a connection when using the default route, using the command prompt.
Right. Now, I think this is one of those that, and in fact, we'll go right to, go right to command prompts. I'm looking through my Network Plus exam objectives, and a great place to go to get all the different command line tools is in the troubleshooting section. It's section 4 of the N10006. It's a different section on the 005, but it lists out in the exam objectives all of the command line tools you need to know. You'll notice on the 006, there's actually a number of IPv6 commands in here as well, the ping and the ping 6, the trace route and the trace route 6. So you have to know all of them. But it goes through a list of everything we would need to know to start troubleshooting. And I think that's a good place to go to find, what do I need to know? I don't have my section 4 videos done for the 006, but a number of these are on my 005 videos that go through ipconfig and what it does. It goes through netstat and what it does. It goes through ifconfig, which is different than ipconfig and for a different operating system. So one of the things the Network Plus does is it's not specific to Windows or specific to Linux or specific to Mac OS. There are different commands in here that might work on different operating systems. So if you're trying to figure out trying to do a recap of the way things went with your Network Plus exam and trying to figure out what command should I have used. Because as I mentioned earlier, and as CompTIA shows in their video, they might just drop you in a command prompt and say, go do this function, go do this thing, go figure it out. And then you have to be able to type things in and make that happen. So I would recommend you have a look at those command line tools. I think everybody should, and get a better understanding of what could they possibly ask me and how would this work when I'm taking the exam. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I think that's a great place to start for those. If you, since you took the exam, and unfortunately didn't get all the way through, but it sounds like you're planning to take it again. If you were going to think about studying for this next exam, what methods, I'm not asking for specifics, but what methods are you planning to use this time before going back into the exam?
Well, I've been watching your videos, and I've been I have a book. I don't have the book in front of me to use the name of the book.
Okay.
And I've been using test out.
Okay, sure. There's sample questions and trying to get you sample exams on the test out.
I don't have any updated test results. I don't know where to go to get any updated sample questions.
Are you taking the 005 or the 006?
005.
Okay, so in many ways, you've actually got some advantages because there is much more study materials available for the 005 than there is for the 006. So that's one of the advantages you actually have for taking the older version right now. And I really recommend, if you're planning to walk in and take the exam before you do, find as many sample questions as you can. And you can find a lot of them in the books themselves. So if you have one book, you've been studying that, and you've been going through those questions, you may want to grab a different book from a different publisher and go through those questions as well. I think it gives you a chance to see the questions from a different point of view. And I think that whenever you're trying to study, you should study from as many different resources as possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Good luck with that. And when are you planning to take your exam? Do you have a date set yet?
About 2 months.
Okay. Well, let us know. We'll do another one of these in 2 months. Call us back, Kenneth, and let us know how it went.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Good studies. And always send me an email if you have another question.
Okay.
Take care. That's a challenge. There was one exam I took so many times. I think I took a cabling exam and I had to take it 3 times to finally get the cabling piece done. And it's irritating. It's so frustrating to get that process and be in there. But you just got to stay with it, and you learn from it. You actually learn quite a bit when you get it wrong, I think. Let's go back to the phones. We have a 478 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hello.
Hello. Hi. What's your name?
Hi, my name is Farah.
Hi. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you today?
I just had a quick question about what you kind of touched on earlier, and I know you're not allowed to give out specific information about the exam, but I was just interested in knowing that I know you mentioned that there would be performance questions in the Network Plus exam.
Right.
Could you go over like the types of performance questions that you would have to do? Because I know you mentioned matching as one. And what were some of the other ones? Well,
I will definitely point you to a video from CompTIA that goes through exactly this question, because this is probably the most common question I get about the performance-based questions is what are they going to be? And I'm going to, you aren't going to see this piece, but I'm going into my my YouTube and bringing up my history, which I'm not going to share with everyone, but okay. This is called, the name of this YouTube video is called Taking a CompTIA Exam, and it is put out by CompTIA on their CompTIA YouTube channel. It goes through what you can expect during the exam, not just the performance-based questions. It does a really good job at stepping through what you would expect to see in the entire exam. So they go through the way the exam screen looks, where different things are on when you flag a question. What does it look like? What are the multiple response questions look like? Here are fill in the blank questions. Here are drag and drop questions. There will be questions with exhibits where they give you a picture and then you have to answer a question based on what you see on the picture. They have also what they call the other performance-based questions, which are the simulation questions. I'm just kind of flipping through the video here to see what else is there. And that seems to be the big mix of them. Okay, and then your exam is over. So those were the ones that they highlighted in their video. I think that's probably a pretty good overview of what you would expect to see on the exam, is those types of questions, which isn't too far outside the scope. It's almost like multiple choice. When you have a matching, you're really just using the same knowledge. You're just answering the question in a different way.
Yes, sir.
I think that's it. Go out to YouTube, search for, I wish YouTube had an easier way of doing these. So just search for taking a CompTIA exam, and I bet you'll find exactly that video.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Good luck with your exam.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. There's, I think the biggest challenge I run into up to this point was trying to explain to people what's on the exam, because CompTIA didn't tell you what the performance-based questions were. There was an older video 2 years ago that talked about it, that apparently they had a problem with it because they had to remove it from YouTube. And now finally, this past week, CompTIA has created this video so that people can have a look. And so now I can just point people over there. Here's what CompTIA says you should be ready for, because they're really going to be the best ones to figure that piece out anyway. Back to the phones, the 661 area code, allegedly. We'll see where this is from. Are you there, caller? I think it's not really 661. So if you're there, tell me your name. It's very quiet. I don't hear anything. I'm going to return you to the queue. Maybe it's the speaker thing. I have a feeling, since the 661 is also where I'm coming from, that you're calling in from Skype. You might want to try the Skype test number and have that come through. Try it out before you call. They have a test number. If you've never used Skype before, it's great. You can call a central Skype number, talk to Skype, and Skype repeats back to you what you just said. So you can hear what other people are hearing, and that works too. Let's go to maybe an international call, +27. Are you there, caller? I hear somebody there. Hi, what's your name? Hello, hello. Nope, hung up. Had enough. That was enough, Professor Messer, for that caller, and I can't say I blame you for working through any of those. The 006 is also in the chat room. We're talking about expirations and retirements. When you take a CompTIA exam and gain the certification, for the Network Plus, you only take one exam and you're certified. The second you would pass that exam, you've got 3 years now from that date that your certification will be valid. And at the end of that 3 years, if you have not renewed the certification, it will then not be valid any longer. It will expire. There is a 3-year expiration for many of the CompTIA exams. So if you take A Plus or Network Plus, Security Plus, CASP, there's some others as well. They're on a 3-year timer, and it starts from the moment you gain the certification. The 006 is exactly the same. The 006 exam is also a 3-year timer. So as soon as you pass it, it's good for 3 years. The 005 retires on August 31st. That means you can no longer take the exam. But if you pass the exam on August 31st, I don't recommend doing that, but if you were to take it and pass it on August 31st, it was down to the wire, you walked in the door, and you passed it on the final day, it's good for 3 years. So the retirement date of an exam is different than the expiration date of the certification. When the exam is retired is when it's no longer available for you to take any longer. But as long as you pass it, it's a 3-year timer. It starts clicking away right then. CompTIA could come out with 10 new exam versions during that 3-year period. Thankfully, they don't, but they could. And if they could come out with 10, it's okay. You're still certified. Nothing changes. You got 3 years before you would ever have to recertify, renew the certification. There's so many different ways to recertify. that it gets into a lot of detail if we start talking about that. I should do an overview of the renewal process and just make a video of it, because there's a lot of moving parts there. And for some reason, they made it so difficult to grasp on their website. They've made it a lot easier recently, but it's a little bit now more of a challenge. And in the chat room, some people are mentioning that, yeah, there are some other third-party certifications that you can use to renew your CompTIA certification. So you could take a Cisco, a Checkpoint, a Microsoft, a VMware, a IBM, a Red Hat. You can take tons of third-party certifications and apply the taking of that certification towards renewing your existing CompTIA cert. You can absolutely do that. And you send in, there's a whole process on the CompTIA website for doing CompTIA exam or certification renewals. Go to CompTIA certification, renewals, get certified, bring this up on my side. Right at the top of the CompTIA page is a continuing education link, how to renew your CompTIA certification. And they really break it down. If you really sit here and parse it out, it is quite straightforward. There's a number of things you can do, and they say you can renew with other IT certifications, not just CompTIAs, but if you chose, for instance, let's say you have the Network Plus, you could take an Aruba certification, Checkpoint, Cisco, CompTIA, CWNP, eCouncil, EMC, GIAC, HP, IBM, ISACA, ISC Squared, Juniper, LPI, Microsoft, Novell, Oracle, Red Hat, SCP. So you can take pretty much all those, I think, are 30 CEUs. So you take and pass any one of those, you have enough CEUs to now update and renew your Network Plus certification. Now here's the kicker. If you take CompTIA exams to renew, you don't pay any money additional to renew your Network Plus. If you take anybody else's exam, you have to pay the annual maintenance fee for the Network Plus exam for each year, for the 3 years, or up to that point. So it costs you a little bit more if you do it by going to a certification. Now, if you go to a training class, you can earn CEUs. By watching this, you can earn CEUs. There's other ways to earn those CEUs. Getting another certification gives you a big chunk of 30 all at once. So that's a very quick and easy way to get it all out of the way all at once. Training classes do this as well. I was talking with somebody in my chat room a couple of weeks ago. They just came back from a training class that was 35 hours long, 37 hours long. Every hour counts as the CEU, and they can apply that back to CompTIA and renew their certification. I think that person needed a little more because it was Security Plus. I think you needed 40 or 50 or something. Yeah, you need 50 for renewing your Security Plus, so we needed even more than that. But that got him a long way down the road, obviously, to do something like that. Let's go to the phones to 559. Are you there, caller? Did I take this one already? Are you there, caller? I hear me. I hear somebody. We'll return you back to the queue. Was that the one that nobody was there? It was very quiet. It's hard to remember. I should make notes. This is one of the challenges with dealing with a phone line. When you're your own screener, that's the way it goes. You folks are very patient when dealing with this. I've got a number of people that have sent me messages during the presentation that talked about where they should go to get a trustworthy study source. As some of you are probably aware, there are sites and resources you can get for your exam that are unauthorized. They're cheating. They've taken the exam questions and they're telling you what's going to be on the exam word for word. There's no way to justify that. That is out and out cheating. So CompTIA even tells you in the exam objectives, CompTIA is not affiliated, does not authorize, endorse, or condone any of these brain dump sites, third-party training sites. They have a big list of their policies. If they find that you've been using these resources, they'll take your certification away. You'll never get a CompTIA certification again. They have they recommend going to certguard.com, which is a third party that provides an idea of are different sites legitimate or not. Or you can go to CompTIA's website. They have a list of ones that they know are not legitimate. So that may be a very good way for you to figure that out. So if you've sent me a note, I obviously can't respond to private messages sent during the study group because I'm doing this. And for those types of questions, I prefer not sending in or not talking specifically about some of those things. But you can go to CertGuard and see if CertGuard's site will give you information. So if you were to go to CertGuard and put in like Professor Messer, I've never talked to these guys at CertGuard, so I guess that's a good thing. And Professor Messer is safe. And the CertGuard team says they appear to be providing their own material. Well, that's true. It's exactly my own. It's nothing but my own material. So that's a good place to go. If you're wondering, is this site legitimate? That's one place you can go to try to figure out those pieces. So maybe that will help you as you're trying to find different resources. You can do that. You can find those pieces. And for almost everybody who sent me a question, is this legitimate? I think you know the answer. If you have to ask if a site is legitimate, I would bet that it is not. I would expect there's some monkey business going on, that there are some ne'er-do-wells working along those lines. It's just cheating yourself and cheating others. And quite honestly, it's sad when somebody has spent all of their time studying from what would appear to be a site that they thought was, I guess they thought it was legitimate, or maybe they didn't. They just knew they were brain dumps. They just studied the brain dumps. They walked into the exam, they tanked it because they're changing the exam questions all the time. So you're never certain if what you're about to get on the exam is what you studied word for word, because all you did was study questions and answers. You have no idea of the technologies behind it. You don't know what they're even talking about. It's like piecing together symbols and having the symbols match up. Unless you know what those symbols mean, you're not going to do well on the exam. And unfortunately, people all the time come in my chat room and say, I studied from this source and I went in and it was nothing like what I studied. Well, did you study from any other source? Nope. Just studied the brain dumps. It's kind of sad because there's so many different resources out there. I happen to have an entire free training course, all videos. You watch every single one of them matched up with the exam objectives. They didn't even look at them. And it kills me because there's money you spend and time and effort to do that. And unfortunately, it doesn't always work out so well. Let's go to the 559. Are you there, caller?
Hi.
I hear someone. Hi, what's your name? It's one of those things where just not quite worked out on that particular call. Oh, I think they decided to give up anyway. I can't say I blame you on that one. Try calling back. We got a few minutes left. My voice is still working. I will not be sitting down and doing videos today for sure, but I'll be producing videos tomorrow. Can't do new videos after doing a study group. For those of you following along, though, on the Professor Messer website, there are the N10006 videos. I don't know if I really had many up this time last month. So far, we are up to 82 videos, 7 hours and 34 minutes of video training for the Network Plus certification, the 006, the latest one. Here they are. Got plenty. Latest ones I put out there. We're all the way through section 2. I think I've got another 4 to add onto the end of section 2. And I have a bunch of videos that are already in the works for section 3. So we're already into those. And I think I looked and I've got 75 more videos to shoot. So content has already been created. I'm sitting in my studio and pumping through the videos every day to get those done. The hard part, it seems, is getting the content created. So the sitting down and actually doing this is relatively straightforward. And then I sit down, this is what I do. And then I go through and edit. This is the editing process for those of you who, I'm not sure if you care enough connection or some external. Say, I've just added these. I have to sync up the audio. What I do is I record both the video and the screen at the same time, and then I piece them together in my editor. I put a picture and a picture up here, and it's kind of hard to see because my big head is in the way. Let's do this. Let's do without my big head in the way. So this is what it looks like on my side when I'm editing the videos. And then I've got mechanisms on my side that I use to sync up audio. This is a good example. So I sit here. This is kind of a ponderous thing to do during the day. You can see the audio is not quite synced up on these two, so I'll sync them up together. Come to right about there. That's right on the money. A wireless router is usually, yeah. So I've got 2 tracks there. You couldn't even tell. Let's get rid of that other track. I'll go to the beginning. You can see the beginning where I was kind of starting up the presentation. So I'll sync these things up. I'll start editing out. You can see if you're following along, you can see where I'll do different tracks. I'll do the same thing over and over and over. And then I have to get into here and edit out all of my mistakes, or if I just didn't like the way it sounded, and then I pump it out and create the video. So that's what I'm working on for the rest of the day. I will not be talking for the rest of the day. I tend to get 5 or 6 videos shot in a day, not because of time constraints, but because it's very difficult to just keep talking for more than a couple of hours. So I have to go through the process and just keep talking and keep talking and keep talking and to figure it out, and becomes a little bit more of a just keep your voice there. And that's why I've got all kinds of things here that I have. I've got my entertainer's secret spray. I've got my vocal zone. So for those of you planning to do voiceover work or shoot a lot of video, you got to have some pastels there to keep things going. We do have a caller, 720 area code, perhaps. Let's see if you're there. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Steve.
Hello, Steve. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. What can we do for you?
Well, I heard you talking about the 6 test and the 005, and I started studying the 005 last week of March.
Okay.
And I know you said that it doesn't matter. You can take the 5, take the 6, but I guess I just still have this question. Would it be beneficial or to start studying the 006 test? I don't plan on taking it until the month after next, so it seems like I have enough time to study it. Is the material similar enough?
I think you do, and the CompTIA does not give you very good direction on what you should be doing with this. The 005 exam has been out for 3 years. There is copious information about it. You can find books everywhere, study resources, and even my videos. I have a complete 005 course available. The 006, my 006 course probably won't be finished until next month. So there's obviously more resources available for the 5 than the 6. As I mentioned,
right.
You get the same cert. If somebody was to look and see, are you certified? They don't know which version of the exam you took. They just see that you are indeed certified for Network Plus. So you don't have to worry that somebody's going to see it and go, yeah, you're certified, but it's only the 005. That's one of the advantages really of having to renew every 3 years, is that the employers don't necessarily even have to worry about that, because they know you at least have the last 3 years worth of information under your belt. You've renewed it, or you've worked in the industry, or you've kept the cert current. So therefore you're fine as far as the newness of the material that you happen to know. It's not like you got the cert 10 years ago and you'd not been doing anything in networking. So at least they know that piece of it. As I mentioned earlier in the study group though, the one thing I think the 006 gives you is that you could actually use that at least for the next year or so as a bargaining chip, as not bargaining chip, but a bragging chip, a bragging right, where you could say, yes, I have the Network Plus certification and it's the latest one with the new content, with the additional emphasis in virtualization and security. Well, I think everybody should have that, don't you, Mr. Employer? Not these people who took it last month. Which isn't necessarily true that you have a better cert than someone who took the 005. But I'm thinking here from a very competitive perspective, what does the 006 give me? I guess it could give me that. I guess that's something I could do with it to make that happen. So that's something the 006 might give you. Between the two, if you were to look at the content between the 005 and the 006, I don't think the content between the two is any more difficult or less difficult. I think the difficulty level is about the same. I think there's a little bit more content on the 006. Not a lot was removed, but quite a few numbers of topics were added. So it's one of those where you're going to have to decide, do I want to do a little bit more extra work to learn a little bit more about the IPv6 and a little bit more about the security, really a lot more about security, and a little bit more about the virtualization. And some of the older topics were tweaked just a bit to provide a little bit more detail. I think it's a better exam on the 006, but it's not necessarily about what's better and what isn't. You're going to learn all these things in networking eventually anyway when you get thrown into the fire that is, your job. It's one of these where you're just trying to get the cert and get done with this. If you're already working on the 005, you're already gone through all the materials, you've got books that have N10 005 on the front, you've already invested in these materials, go take the 005. You'll have the cert. And you'll have exactly the same Network Plus certification that everybody else has. As long as you know you're going to be taking it before the end of August, I think you'll be fine.
Okay, great.
You'll have to figure out in your mind which is valuable or not to you. And those are the pluses and minuses in my mind anyway.
Right. Yeah, I just figured it, since I had time, I thought maybe it would be beneficial, but you've answered my question. I think I'll go ahead with this and then work on the other one after, or I can even look at the information, intertwine them. But
I think you should. If you're trying to figure it out, go grab the exam objectives for both, put them next to each other, and start drawing lines. They're structured differently now. Things that were in the first section of 005 are in the last section of 006. But that's what I did, is I went through and said, this is old stuff. This is old stuff. Oh, here's something new. Oh, here's something new. Oh, this one's old. It's not a one-to-one, but you can get a pretty good idea of what you would have to know. So that at least you wouldn't have to spend any more money until you were really sure you want to do it.
Right. Okay.
Well, good luck with that, and let us know how the exam goes.
All right, I will. Typically, how long do you think it would take to prepare for it?
Oh, this is a good question, and there's no good answer. I think most
I'm sure there
most people, I think, on average, I think they spend anywhere from 3 to 6 months to study and take the exam, because obviously your personal knowledge of networking and these technologies are going to help you as you're studying. If you already know everything there is to know about categories of cable, there's a whole section of things you don't have to study for and memorize, because you've already been working with Cat 5 and Cat 6, and you've been crimping things. You know what all the tools are. Oh, I've used a multimeter. I know how to use a TDR and an OTDR. Those are things that are naturally second nature for you, so you don't have to spend a lot of time on them. But if you're fresh to networking, you've never worked with these things before, you're learning the OSI model from scratch, it could take 6 months of on and off studying to finally get there. I think the average is probably 3 months. I saw a note on Reddit where somebody passed his Network Plus and Security Plus in weeks, in like 3 weeks. But that was somebody who had already been doing this for quite some time in the industry. So he just really referenced a lot of other materials and went and took it and had no problem. I just took an exam on a third party with brand new content I had never touched before, and it took me 3 months to sit down and go through the materials so that I was comfortable before I walked in for something I had never touched before. It was another manufacturer's product. I had to understand their entire command line structure. I had to sit down and understand. There was a networking piece. Okay, I know how routers work. How does this router work? It was that type of scenario. And it takes some time. And I think the more time you spend and the more methodical you are with going through the exam objectives, the better off you're going to be once you're ready to take the exam. You'll absolutely be ready before August. I'm certain of it.
Okay. Well, it doesn't. I want to learn it in depth anyway, so I've given myself 3 months. We'll see how that goes.
I think that's a good time frame. I think you'll do fine. Yeah,
if I don't pass it the first time, I still have a month or 2 months to to acquire it. So that'll be good.
I think that's
I'll
a
let you
good way
know.
to look at it, because if you don't pass it, you've now sat in the exam, you know the structure, you know how it's laid out, you understand the way they're asking the questions. You're not going to get the same questions, obviously, the next time you take it. It's a different set of questions that will be presented to you, but you at least have the feel of what it is, and you at least have been to perhaps one of the testing centers, and now you're comfortable with the people and the center itself. Those are all good things, I think, and it's all a learning experience.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, good luck, Steve. Let us know how it goes.
I will do that. Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Take care.
That's one thing I really recommend people do is go to the centers. Go see where you will be taking the exam. You can walk in the door. There's usually a receptionist there. You can ask, or maybe you want to call beforehand and set up a time. Can I come by and see your testing center? And I'm trying to find the one that's right for me. Can I just poke my head in the door? Is there a window? Can I look in and get a feel for what you have there? I've been to testing centers. And it's hard to even call this a testing center. It was a closet. It was somebody took a door on a closet. Oh, they didn't even take the door off. They kept the door on. They put the tiniest desk you've ever seen in the back. They got rid of their clothes, thankfully, in the closet. There was no vacuum cleaner in there, but it was a closet. They had this tiny little desk. At the time, there were no LCD monitors. So it was a big fat, 13, 15-inch monitor in there. And, on the mouse, that's the rolly ball mouse, and it was dirty and it barely worked. And I sat down and took the exam in there. I passed the exam, but what a miserable exam experience that particular one was. Nobody should sit through something like that. And from that point on, I went around before booking my exam, and I checked to see where this place was. Is it in a nice area? I stuck my head in the door, had a look at their exam area, made sure at least the equipment was something that was at least relatively modern. That's one of those things that can really help you when you get around to the other side of that with those pieces. Going back to all this work that I need to do later today with the editing, somebody was asking, what do I use to record my computer screens? Specifically, what software do I use? And I don't use software any longer. Although I used to. I originally used CompTIA on Windows to be able to record my screens. I switched to Mac OS for a number of reasons that we can all fight about and argue ad infinitum later. I moved to Mac OS 10, and I got the CompTIA for Mac. Well, it turns out there was a bug in CompTIA for Mac that I was saving things off in a QuickTime format, and it wasn't saving the frame rates properly. And for my editing, if you talk to any editor of video, frame rate is so important. And it ended up that I would have the videos synced up with audio, just as I was showing earlier. But by the time the video was over, the audio had slipped because the frame rates were different. It told me it put it at the right frame rate. I told it to put it at the right frame rate. It wouldn't do it. So I dumped CompTIA. Occasionally they'll tweet me and say, why are you still using that other stuff? And I say, because yours still has a bug. And they recognize that there's a bug there. I think it's the integration of their product with the QuickTime that's being used to render it in QuickTime. Regardless, it wasn't working for me. So now if I'm doing anything in software on a Mac, I'm using ScreenFlow to do it. ScreenFlow is a third-party product from, isn't it from the folks that do the, I'm just talking, why don't I just grab it and have a look? Telestream, that's right, Telestream, because I have their streaming software. I don't use their streaming software, but I have their streaming software I used at one time. So Telestream, that's what I use. These days, everything I do, here's some inside baseball for everyone. So I have a hardware-based video switcher that is called a TriCaster, and this is the control screen for the TriCaster. You'll occasionally see me looking up. I have like a 50-inch television in front of me that's showing this TriCaster video switcher, and when I'm controlling the video switcher from this very colorful control panel right here. So when I move from camera to camera, I have little buttons here that allow me to switch and show different things. So I've taken all the video from my laptop, for instance. I've got an HDMI output. That HDMI is going directly to the TriCaster through a number of switching devices. On my screen that's in front of me, which is the one you're seeing whenever I show my screen and start demonstrating things, you're seeing me flip through this here. This is what you see if I was to do this. So you're looking at the screen that's in front of me right now. I have the output from this actually going to Thunderbolt. I guess I could go HDMI. You can do anything. You can do DisplayPort. Really, it's DisplayPort going out of this. And it's going from DisplayPort. It's mirroring this screen in DisplayPort and going to my video switcher. Whew. So now I've got all these different video inputs. I've got my bird cam, I call it, up here. That's giving my bird's eye view. It's going into the video switcher. I've got, do I have another input into the video switcher? I do. My laptop is the other input. So I've got a camera in front of me is the other input, this camera. So I've got 4 physical video inputs that are going into this video switcher. And then I take what I'm showing, the screen you're seeing is called a program screen. And there's a second one that's on standby whenever I set up a shot. It's kind of hard for you to see, but right in front of me are 2 little screens. This is the screen that is shown if I hit a button. This is the screen you're seeing live, and then they switch. So I'm taking both the preview and the program, and they are being recorded to a separate video recording system to the right down here. So whoever asked this question is probably sick of this answer by now. So down here, I have a rack. It's underneath. I have a rack on both sides. This little Cylon looking red thing going back and forth, those are 2 SSDs in 2 separate video systems, recording systems. They are recording what is on the preview and the program outputs coming right from the TriCaster and recording them here. That is what I use to do my video editing, is the video on that. So when I'm sitting here and doing my training videos, I'm talking to the camera, it's recording my desktop screen and recording my camera, it's storing them on separate files, and that's connected to my computer with Thunderbolt at 10 gig. So I get very high throughput as if it was a locally connected disk. It is remarkable. It is fantastic. It's changed my life, actually, because I can shoot video, immediately grab that SSD, stick it into its SSD reader, and at 10 gig, connect to that device, edit on this screen, even though my multi-gigabit files are down here. And now I'm able to do all my editing, not touch any of my local storage, finish it, render it, put it on YouTube, and I'm off to the next one. It's beautiful. All of that also I'm backing up, of course, constantly. I have another set of drives, network attached storage, that's in the data center closet, which is, I call it my data center. It's like a 6 by 10 foot closet back here. Got a 19-inch rack, just with very little on it at the moment, but I have plans. There's stuff coming along there. So that's for a very simple question you asked. That was a very long answer to have that there. That is where that came from, how I get that done today. So instead of using a separate software that's storing it locally on my machine, it's hardware now, and the hardware is handling everything. It's just easier that way. It's faster that way. It's more efficient for me. I can now use this video switcher for my live streams. I use it for my recordings. It's very flexible. That's the way to go. And I'm going to add on even a separate device. Right now, the video switcher is what's doing the stream. So I'm going to be adding on a separate device that just does the streaming. So I can have actually 1080p streaming. Right now we're looking at 720p streaming. I'm going to do 1080. So that's one of those. So that's a good example of things to have there. Well, we've gone about 2 hours now, and I can tell, on my voice I can tell. So that was a very long, involved last explanation. I'm sorry that's what we did, was go all the way around the barn there. I could quite literally, what I should do is sit down, do a live stream once I get this on a separate device, do a live stream of me recording a video training, and you'll see just how ponderous and boring it is as I do each slide 3 and 4 times, and watch me mess up words. and then pull the data in, edit, render, stick it on YouTube just so you're able to kind of see the process. And it's just when you rinse and repeat. At this point, once you have written the content, everything else is sort of automatic. Of course, there's the presentation is important, but the editing process, creating the images of it, sticking it on YouTube, that's all very rote and simple. It's mindless. Part of the challenge, if you ever know anybody who does a lot of video editing, a lot of us when we're at work, we'll put on music, we'll listen to podcasts, we'll watch the television while we're working. It's there and it's going. But when you're editing, you can't do that. So because you have to concentrate on the material in front of you, you have to listen to the audio, you have to understand where you're making the cuts, and you can't listen to third party. So it's boring. It's a painfully boring process of listening to myself do exactly the same thing I just talked about a day before and go through the process and listen to myself mess up, go to the next thing. It's become much faster to do the editing, and it's so important to do the editing very well. Get the audio right, get the video right. It's obviously one of the most important parts of the process, but boy, it can be just painful. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us on the study group, for calling into the show. There's so much more content we're going to go through. I think it's next month. We've got another Network Plus study group ready to go. I've just got to find the date to put it in there. So keep checking back in the calendar. I have not set the April and May. I guess those would be May timeframes for this next one. It will be sometime in there. Just don't know quite where. Probably earlier in the month. I'll probably do it about a month from now, I hope. But just keep checking back, professormesser.com/calendar for that, and we'll figure out those pieces. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for everybody in the chat room for being here. Thank you for calling. Could not do it without you. We'll see you next time in the study group. Thanks, everyone.